Hi guys, Toria here. Just another little reminder / warning that persistent clicking sound is a part of this episode, just like it was last week. Although we did figure out the problem about 2/3 of the way through the record. We isolated it, we fixed it. It was all my fault. I will take ownership of that. So it's not going to be an issue next week. I'm super, super frustrated because this was such an incredible episode and we discuss so many awesome, fun things. So I hope you guys bear with us and that you're not driven too crazy. Okay, enjoy.
The Flashing Girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Oh, Mr. Sheffield. It's the podcast about The Nanny, the hit sitcom from the 90s, starring SAG-AFTRA president Fran Drescher. This week, we are talking about Season 5, Episode 21, The Best Man. I am Sean DePasquale here with...
Toria Sheffield.
That's right. And Toria, what is The Best Man episode about?
This is the episode where Mr.
Brothers. We're keeping it in. Mr. Brothers, the new character on the show.
Mr. Brother moves in next door. Mr. Sheffield's brother Nigel returns and lets the cat out of the bag that he and Fran had a fling, and it causes a lot of ripples in
drama.
The relationship. Drama.
Yeah. This one was written by the great Rick Shaw and directed by Dorothy Lyman.
This is one of these episodes where the whole drama plays out and is resolved in one episode. But I really thought this could have been a multi-episode thing and potentially even bumped the engagement for a while.
Well, what I agree. I actually wrote, one of my notes was they should have made this the season finale and it should have been part 1 of 2 and they should have bumped the wedding to next season.
Yes.
Because, and I don't think they needed to drag it out. The wedding literally could have been episode 2 of the next season. But I think that it would have been really interesting to have this end on a real, what are we going to do about this? This is a real problem.
Yeah.
And then kind of move on from there.
I wonder if they felt like the wedding was such a big deal that it had to be a premiere or a finale.
Yeah, probably.
But yeah, it's just, man, yeah, this was I really thought this was going to cause bigger problems than it did. So this episode starts. Mr. Sheffield is auditioning women for a new show. And so they're kind of all these beautiful women are hanging out in the living room. And Fran and Val are kind of hanging out there too. And, we kind of find out that Fran definitely doesn't love all these, hot, gorgeous ladies always around. But, she tolerates it. Or rather, actually, she says something about how she doesn't like it. Val's like, Fran, you don't need to worry. These women want to be famous for theater, not marrying a millionaire, kind of insinuating that's what Fran is up to. But no sooner does she say that, does one of the women turn around, and it is Marla Maples, a.k.a. Donald Trump's second wife. And by this point, they had been divorced about a year and a half.
Yeah.
They were married from 93 to 97 or something. And she's Tiffany Trump's
mom. Yeah. The dark horse or yeah.
Yeah. So I was shocked. I was like, oh my God, Marla Maples. Oh my God.
Yeah, me too. I was genuinely what?
So
why is she here?
Truly.
It's so 90s.
Yeah.
This whole thing is.
And then,
my God.
They're like, oh my God, Marla Maples, what are you doing here? And she's like, oh, I'm auditioning. I kind of want to get into theater now that I'm a single woman. And then she's like, and that Maxwell Sheffield and I, we used to have quite the flirtation. And it's kind of revealed that she and Maxwell had maybe not outright dated, but definitely had a little something in the past, right?
Gross.
And Niles appears and he literally starts dragging Marla by the arm and going, Mr. Sheffield just wanted me to tell you that the role's been cast. Goodbye. And shoves her out the door. And then after he slams it, he just turns around and goes, I've been waiting 5 years for this marriage. I'm not going to let some shiksa ruin it. It killed me.
Such a good line.
It killed me. And
Same.
but so then Niles like heads upstairs and he's just like, oh, I'm going upstairs to prepare the guest room. Oh, Mr. Sheffield's brother Nigel's coming from London today, and kind of like exits, which, I mean, I gasped as well. And Fran freaks out because if everyone will remember, the last time we saw Nigel was last season when he and Fran had kind of this really special night out, and he falls head over heels and is like, come to London with me, let's get married. And like, if you meet me on the Queen Elizabeth, or is it the Queen Mary? I forget. Whatever the
Queen Elizabeth, I think.
The Queen
Queen Mary doesn't. That's like down here in Long Beach, and it doesn't sail.
oh.
It hasn't sailed since like the 1800s or some shit.
It's like the Maid of the Mist. But so it's like, you know, meet me on the Queen Elizabeth, and we'll sail to London, and we'll like have a life together. And Fran actually goes to meet him. I can hear you both. I can hear. Is that a bong hit?
I'm leaving it in. It's legal.
Yeah, it's true. It's legal in California.
That's how I get my powers.
Oh, don't. But you know, my mom will be very upset about this.
Oh, I'm sorry, Toria's mom.
But so yes, and Fran actually goes to meet him, but she just ends up being late, and that's the only reason that she misses the ship and doesn't leave with Mr. Sheffield's brother. But
yes,
if you'll also remember, she goes back to the mansion that night, and you can tell she realizes like she's actually where she's supposed to be. So,
yes.
So it was never like truly a huge temptation or like a huge thing that might have happened, but it definitely was a thing.
And did they do it?
We talked about this. I think they probably did.
They did. Yeah. Okay.
Like they probably had that night out dancing and then probably did it.
Uh-huh. Okay.
But so anyway, she has not seen him since then. And Mr. Sheffield definitely does not know this happened. So she's just like, oh my God. And then the doorbell rings and she's like, it's okay. We're adults. It's been a year and a half. We'll just act like nothing happened. And then no sooner does she open the door, he goes, hello, darling, dips her and gives her a huge kiss on the mouth.
I know. I wrote, oh no, she cheated.
Yeah. No, but she didn't kiss him. He kissed her.
Yeah. So it's assault?
Well, kind of, I guess. Well, anyway, though, so that's a little bit of a misdirection because at first you're like, oh my God, no, he's still totally in love with her. But then it turns out he's just a goofy guy who kisses people on the mouth because then no sooner does he do that, does his new French love come in. And he's like, this is like I don't know if they're engaged, but he's like, this is my new love, like Gigi, Genevieve or something like that. And so Fran quickly realizes that like he's just a tremendous flirt and that he's actually totally over it too. And I think they clear that up very quickly to be like, this isn't going to be something where Fran is actually conflicted or where Nigel's actually conflicted. It's truly just that Mr. Sheffield was never told about their fling. And that's where this.
Yeah.
And so so there's like kind of this funny scene where Mr. Sheffield comes in and like kind of the cat almost gets let out of the bag a couple times and Fran keeps being like, and like making sure no one finishes their sentences when they're going to reference the fling. And then after Mr. Sheffield walks out, she's like, Nigel, like Maxwell cannot know that you and I had any like dealings with each other last year. And he's like, oh, don't worry, we're English. We don't talk about anything. I thought that was a very funny line.
Yes.
And then in the next scene, Fran's with Sylvia and Yetta in the living room, and they're like sorting through wedding gifts. And Nigel comes in with Mr. Sheffield, and he's like insisting that they have to throw Mr. Sheffield a bachelor party. And, you know, Mr. Sheffield's kind of like, oh, no, it's so uncivilized. I don't like the idea. And Nigel's like, you must. And he's like, well, what do you think, Fran? And she's just like, I think you should do it. It'll be fun. And then they leave and Sylvia's just like, you should be careful, Fran. I know of a guy who left his fiance for the girl who jumped out of the cake at his bachelor party. Fran's like, who? And she's like, your father. And I'm like, wow, what an origin story for Morty and Sylvia. I
loved that so much. I love that we got this quick origin story, and it's like, she's a stripper?
Well, and you know, remember, they are very hot for each other. We know they're kinky AF, so that kind of tracks. But also, I would say, it doesn't, I mean, I don't know if it actually tracks in any real logical way, but it was a funny line.
What do you mean?
Like, I just don't think Sylvia was jumping out of cakes. I mean, maybe she was. She was a hot young lady. Maybe she's trying to earn a little extra money.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, my note here was if we presuppose that she looked like Fran, then sure, right? Like,
yeah,
why not?
Yeah, why not?
Like, she was like a little hot number. I don't know.
I would love to jump out of the cake though, but if I didn't have to be a stripper right after, I mean, that'd be really fun.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's like kind of what happens at the end of this episode.
Yeah, exactly. But so she's like, you should be careful, Fran. And Fran's like, no, Ma, like I completely trust Maxwell. And like, it's clear he's only doing this bachelor party to like appease Nigel. And then Sylvia goes, yeah. And I only went to Hershey, Pennsylvania to see the Amish. Which like, if you aren't from the East Coast or you're not from the United States, and we do have some international listeners, that joke is probably a huge just mystery box, right? Like a question mark. But basically for anyone who doesn't understand that reference, so in the state of Pennsylvania, there is a town called Hershey, and that is, yes, where the chocolate brand was born. So there's like, I freaking love it. So you could go and do like a tour of the Hershey factory, and I don't know if it's still there, but there used to be a little amusement park, and like it smelled like Hershey chocolate, and it was like this really fun place, But also in Pennsylvania and in upstate New York in the U.S., there is a group of people called the Amish, or like the Pennsylvania Dutch, and they immigrated from Dutch. Where
they immigrated from Dutch.
Where is Dutch from? Danish.
Yeah,
oh my
they're
God.
Danish.
Everyone,
Wow.
I slept late today, just so you know, so I'm still waking up. But
and she's drunk too.
Yeah, well, that's
it's both things.
That's always the case. But so they immigrated, hundreds of years ago. And their religion does not permit them to interact or be a part of the modern world. So, you'll be driving your car, and then on the side of the road, there'll be like a family in a horse and buggy, bonnets, and oh, great. Sean's cake is the Pennsylvania Dutch. What a reveal, folks. But no, so it's like you'll literally be like living your modern life.
Huge reveal. Freaking Sie Deutsch.
Can you imagine? But so, they all their clothes are handmade and look like they're kind of from olden times. And
every time you say something, I'm going to add boing.
I know, because I was about to say they build and raise their own barns.
Oh.
But so it's a really fascinating culture. Cool. But anyway, so that's a really long way of saying that's the context for the joke of I say I go to Hershey, Pennsylvania to see the Amish, when really she's going to eat all the Hershey.
Eat all the chocolates.
Yeah.
Okay.
But okay. We can cover most of that. So we then cut to that night. It's the bachelor party. Also, did you think it was kind of gross that like Brayton wanted to go to his dad's bachelor party?
Yeah, I thought it was fucking disgusting.
Right? Like maybe a teenage boy would be like
disgusting.
So enticed by the idea of seeing strippers that he like wouldn't really realize it would also mean seeing his dad like do that stuff.
It was gross. I thought it was inappropriate, honestly. I really did. I was like, that's gross. What?
And also that Mr. Fran was like, well, you're not old enough, so you can't. So it's like
that was the reason why.
I mean,
if he had just been a few years older.
I mean, honestly, I bet you there are some families where like stuff like that happens, though, where it's like you take your son to the strip club for like rite of passage kind of thing.
Oh man, I would have stabbed my eyes out if my dad took me to a strip club.
I mean, I just
like in the strip, I would have been like stabbing myself in the eyes.
Just try to stab yourself in the neck so you can bleed out and die.
Yeah. Bye.
But so they're Nigel and Mr. Sheffield are there. They're having a good time. They're drinking, and then I think just because he's too drunk to realize it, Nigel just goes, "Isn't it crazy, old man, that like Fran could have been your sister-in-law?" And he's like, "What?" what do you mean? He's like, well, I proposed to her last year and she just, she didn't end up meeting me, but wow, that would have been crazy. And right as that that information sinks into Mr. Sheffield's brain, a huge cake gets rolled out and Fran jumps out of it because I think clearly Sylvia had gotten in her head and she kind of maybe like wanted to be there for the party.
Yep.
And Mr. Sheffield just looks at her and like basically yells, you were engaged to my brother or something like that. And she literally just goes, goodbye, and like jumps back in the cake.
Yeah, it's really funny.
Like, see ya.
It's a very funny beat.
Yeah, basically like, get me out of here.
Yeah, she goes like, whoop, like sinks back down into the cake. Yeah. And there's nowhere to go. Like those things are hollow inside. It's very funny.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
And then we cut back to the mansion that night and, they're getting home and they're clearly in the middle of a huge fight. And he is just like, I cannot believe you did that with my brother and you never told me. And she's like, you have to remember, from my perspective, you had said you loved me. You had taken it back. We weren't really a thing. I was just kind of, we didn't have anything. And they're doing that little back and forth. And he kind of just goes, I just can't believe you did that and you didn't have the character to tell me. And here's the thing. I actually completely see it from both of their perspectives. From her perspective, she's absolutely right. Like he, was jerking her around for years. He was hot then cold. He was not committing. There's, she could not count on a future with him at that point. Even though, he'd be like, well, you knew how I felt, blah, blah, blah. But, from his perspective, there is something about not knowing that it happened and it's your own brother that would feel like a huge deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean, this would be like we said at the top, they could have pulled this into 2 episodes because this would be a huge deal. This isn't even you wouldn't even have to it is stretch it and make it more dramatic for TV because just the concept in and of itself is it's a huge betrayal. I'm sure from Maxwell's point of view, that no one even told him, let alone that there's still feelings there clearly. It's all very upsetting.
Yes, and I do think, because I was thinking about it, I think there's I think Fran is I can see how. From her perspective, she was in the realm of being reasonable by not telling him. But from his perspective, it's not reasonable. Again, because she'd be like, we were not together. I did not cheat on you. This was not going to affect us in any way. I'm not in love with that person. Telling my new, telling Miss Maxwell, it's not really necessary. And it's not like I'm ever going to have some affair with his brother. And again, we weren't together. But I can see him being it just feels like if we were going to be together, we would need to have told each other these things just from a you and me being close perspective, right? I don't want there to be these big parts of you that I don't know anything about. I don't know. I think it's very much I would love to hear a couples counselor's take on if you are obligated to share something like that or not, for the health of a relationship.
I mean, I think you are. In my personal opinion, Elizabeth and I wouldn't keep something like that from each other. We would just deal with it, we just talk about it and deal with it, and it is what it is. You know what I mean? And if you can't get over it, then it's not. Then the relationship's just not going to last. But to just ignore it. Or never talk about it, or sweep it under the rug and not expect, you sweep stuff under the rug and it's in the darkness and bad things grow in darkness, So it's you really got to just shine a light on everything and deal with it head on.
Yeah, I think probably for the healthiest relationships, that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise Bane's gonna get ya.
Yeah. Born in the darkness.
What did he say?
You just visit occasionally.
Wow, Bane and Lorne Michaels sound very similar. But so wait, okay, so they're at the house, they're fighting, and yes, and he's like, I just can't believe you didn't have the character to tell me. And that kind of is like a mic drop, and he walks out, and she feels horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the next scene, the next day, Fran's in the kitchen crying, and Sylvia and Niles are there, and Fran's kind of blaming herself, and then Sylvia and Niles are like blaming each other, which is very funny because he's like, can't believe like you didn't like teach her to avoid a mess like this. You had her till she was 30 or till she was 29 years old. And then she looks at him and she's like, you had her every year since she was going back to 29. Basically meaning like she's been lying about her age.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Sheffield comes in and he kind of is like, can we just talk about this privately? So they go into another room and they're still very much in the thick of this. He's incredibly hung up on the fact that this happened with his own brother and he never knew. And Fran, again, like I do understand her perspective. She's like, I thought you didn't want me anymore. Like, what did you expect? And she's like, and I'm kind of thinking that maybe you are making such a big deal out of this because you're looking for a way to get out of your commitment to me. Like that you want a way out. And this is an easy way, right? And I think I actually might start thinking the same thing too with, based on the context and the history of their relationship. Like I would have a little bit of doubt or insecurity when stuff popped out. Like, is this secretly his way of trying to weasel out of this again?
You think so?
I think given their history, absolutely.
That's interesting.
And then I think also like from her perspective, she's like, cool, I get it. Like you feel like I should have told you this, but you also have to remember like, well, I should have told you, I did not actually make a transgression. Like we were not together. And if anything, you were pushing me away. So like, it's not, I did not cheat on you like that, so don't treat this like adultery or infidelity. I can understand your hurt that you just like didn't know about the fact.
Well, and it's his brother.
Yeah.
Right. It's also that like, it's of all people, it's my brother, which is like a whole other thing. That's why I think the honesty up front is really important in this scenario.
Yeah.
Like I think if it was just some random dude, no, she probably doesn't have to ever bring it up. But I think like because it is his brother, she should have told him like right away. Like
yeah. I agree. But she's like, you're making such a big deal out of this. I feel like maybe you're trying to get out of the wedding. And he's like, I just don't think I can forgive you yet. And she's like, well, fine, I'm going to make it easy for you. And she just takes the ring off and gives it to him. And
I gasped.
Yeah. She was really fed up. I think she, from her perspective, was just understood. Yeah, she made a mistake, but like was also fed up and probably feeling insecure that this was just another one of his old Mr. Sheffields.
Yeah. Old Mr. Sheffield.
Old Mr. Sheffield. And it's in the next scene. Fran's coming down the stairs. Sylvia's she has like her suitcase and she's packed her bags. She's going to leave. And Sylvia's like, no, you can't do this to me. Just like following her down the stairs. And then Cece comes in and she of all people like sees Fran with a suitcase. And she's like, where are you going? And Fran explains that, she gave Maxwell the ring back. And, he's basically has accused her of being unfaithful and like she's not going to stay for that.
Yep.
And Sylvia, like, it's not Sylvia, Cece looks at her and she's like, me too. She's like, are you kidding? You've been a total doormat for 5 years. Like basically being like how could he possibly think that like you of all people were like running around on him? And then she's like, plus Maxwell definitely has checked people out. Like she's like, like he definitely is no saint either. Like you shouldn't put up with this. Like you should go fight him on this.
Yeah.
And Fran is like, you know what? Yeah, no, you're right. And it was kind of exactly what she needed to hear. And she like puts her bag down and goes back upstairs. And then Niles looks at Cece and he's just like, do you realize you just helped Miss Fine and may have helped them reconcile? And she's like, I know. the damn Prozac is making me care about people. And she's like, and they said there were no harmful side effects. And I loved it. I loved that she kind of like when she came in and like she was actually like, wait, suitcase, like where are you going? And
I loved it. I loved it. This whole interaction I thought was so cute and like really well written, very funny. It was great.
I think there's also this part about Cece's character, and it's what I love. It's as much as she loves to like hate on other people and be miserable, like that's actually her comfort zone. Like if Fran was not there to sort of like, you know, for her to throw insults at, to drive her crazy, she'd like miss Fran.
Yeah.
You know, like, so I really like that Cece sort of saves the day. And I think a nice segue to just, I don't know, maybe the new dynamic that's coming with everyone.
Yes, I agree.
And so in the next scene, it's a little while later, and Fran goes into Mr. Sheffield's office, ostensibly to apologize, but we kind of get the feeling she has something up her sleeve. And she's like, Maxwell, I just want to say I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I thought about it, and I would feel the exact same way if I were in your position. And he's like, well, you know, thank you for saying that. And, you know, I'm still not totally ready to forgive, but I do appreciate it. And then while he's talking and kind of like lecturing, she kind of like motions to someone off screen to come into the office. And then someone comes in, and it is Marla Maples again. I totally forgot she was in the earlier part of this episode. Like, I don't know.
By the end, you're like, oh my God, she's back.
I know.
Or you're like, oh, cool, they got Marla Maples.
And then and Maxwell looks up, and he's clearly completely flustered to see her. And he's like, oh, Marla. And she's like, Maxwell, hello. Like, oh my God, how long has it been since we saw each other? And he's like, oh, it's 4 or 5 years. And she's like, no, a year and a half. Oh, like, weren't we having the best time? And Mr. Sheffield suddenly is like put in the position of like, oh, I was also definitely like flirting with people and like not being, you know, Mr. like completely devoted to this love affair with Fran, like during our time together.
Yep.
And so, and then he, you know, he's kind of like flustered, and then he ushers her out. And actually, I think Niles comes in and grabs her and throws her out again because he doesn't want to hear it. And then like, you know, she leaves, and Frank kind of looks at him like, and he's like, okay. He's like, point taken. Neither of us like were like super straight arrows during this whole confusing time of our courtship, and it's kind of all forgiven. And she takes the ring back. And again, I do think the issue was not quite just that she had a fling or a flirtation. It's who it was with that was the real
Totally.
thing. But they wanted to wrap this up because they got a wedding to deal with the next 2 episodes.
Yeah.
So,
I think, like you said, I think it needed a little more space to breathe because of the brother of it all. And instead they went with like, oh, well, he was just jealous that she like was with someone, but he was with someone too. So it's all good. Okay, goodbye. Like it needed a little more room to breathe. Good episode though, but just probably would have been helpful to have that.
Yeah, this whole thing could, you know, it's like you have to remember when like Ross and Rachel seemed to get back together, and then like, you know, something would pop up and it would bump the whole timeline like another half a season. And, you know, I guess maybe the network was like, no, we got to end this with a wedding.
Yeah. And I'm excited for it. And then did you do the button?
The button is Yetta is at the mansion, and she says she got Fran a bread maker for her wedding, and then the doorbell rings, and it's a little old Eastern European woman named Malka who's there to make bread.
I liked it so much.
She was such an adorable little woman.
I thought it was funnier than it had any right to be. Or at least I laughed at it more than I should have probably. I thought that was a very funny bun.
Very funny. Very funny. Loved
little
it.
Lady comes in.
And now, because we've somehow been recording for almost an hour, let's move into our favorite lines and moments.
Segments.
Okay.
And now, segments.
So, segments.
Yeah, no, I think we should move on to segments.
To say we can move on to our segments.
And now, segments.
Segments with Sean and Toria.
Man, you guys, Toria really tried to get through this without hearing the theme, and I was not gonna let that happen, folks. You're welcome. I got your back always. Okay, favorite lines and or moments.
I really loved when Nigel comes in and he's talking to everyone, and then Cece comes in and she's like, "Oh, I didn't know you were coming." And then Maxwell's like, "Yes, Cece's been away on holiday." And then Nigel goes, "All right, you ate crackers." And then Cece goes, "Oh, it's fine." And then she like leans in and to Nigel and she's like, she's like, "Oh, it's fine. They say the first step to our recovery is admitting you have a problem." And she leans in and she goes, "Though between you and me, I'm fine and I'm suing those quacks." And then my other favorite line that I flagged was Niles like hurls an insult at Cece because she says she was at Crate and Barrel, and he's like, "Did you find anything to wear?" And then she goes, "No, but I saw something you'd love at Husky Butler Boys." I love it.
Husky Butler Boys is so good. All right. I had a couple. I had, you mentioned I haven't waited for 5 years for some little shiksa to show up and ruin the wedding, which was a great line. I also really liked Cece saying, "You'll always be a bridesmaid." It was just a killer line delivery. I also like
to Niles.
Yeah, to Niles.
But no, it's like you'll always be a bridesmaid.
Yeah. I also liked the heavy metal Jewish band Smashing Pumpkins. That got me so good. And then I also got Yetta going, "I don't want Sammy looking at all those girls." And then going, "Yetta, he's blind." And she goes, "Yeah, but he sees with his hands."
I love that too.
So good. And then Maxwell is like, after he like finds out what happens, he goes like, "Fran, like, this is like, you hurt me so bad, and it's like you plunged a knife into my heart." And she goes, "Are you sure you don't have Jewish blood?"
Yes. I liked how it wasn't like, "Are you sure you're not Jewish?" It's
Jewish blood. Also, Fran bursting in and going, "Ma, a terrible thing happened." And Sylvia going, "The caterer won't make a twice-baked potato?" And Fran going, "Why do you always assume the worst?"
Yeah.
The other great Sylvia line was Fran going, "A year and a half ago, I almost married Nigel." And Sylvia going, "Oh, you could have been married a year and a half ago."
Yep. Great line.
Oh my God. There was so many. This was a great episode. Also, I wanted to point out, I'll do it in a minute because it's going to come up. Okay.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
Amazing lines. And then we had so much Yiddish this episode, Sean. It was a cornucopia of Yiddish.
Not just Yiddish. We also had Hebrew.
I kind of remember what the Hebrew thing was. It well, you'll have to tell me, but okay. So we got Bubby, which can be grandmother, or kind of like, it's kind of a term of endearment as well. We got Shiksa, which is a non-Jewish lady who usually tempts a Jewish man.
Uh-huh.
The band that Sean was talking about, the Smashing Pumpkins. How do you say it?
Puppets.
Puppets' belly button.
Yeah, your little puppets. Give me your little puppets. My grandma used to go, "Ooh, I love that little puppets." Yeah.
Oh, Fran says the whole Megillah at one point, which means like it's like the whole thing. Like, it's like, tell me about the whole Megillah.
Does that come from Megillah Gorilla?
I don't think it comes.
Or is Megillah Gorilla based on the whole Megillah?
What's Megillah Gorilla?
It was like a cartoon. Like,
I mean, it's not from Megillah Gorilla if it's Yiddish, but Megillah Gorilla.
I wonder if Megillah Gorilla was like, I wonder if they got that name from like the Yiddish. Yeah, in Yiddish, a Megillah is a long, tenuous, and embroidered account from the Hebrew Megillah, a story written in a scroll. One episode has Megillah saying, "Such a Megillah over a gorilla." So they knew what they were doing.
That's adorable.
That's adorable.
Old timey too, so they really probably had to slip that in.
Yeah.
But so that we got the whole Megillah, and then we also got Bashert, which is really nice.
Bishert. It's Bishert, and that is that's Hebrew. That's not even Yiddish. That's Hebrew.
For meant to be.
Yes, and when Elizabeth went through her Jewish conversion, the rabbi, after we were talking to her, and she told Elizabeth and I that she felt we were bishert, which was really nice. I thought that was really sweet.
That's so nice.
Coming from a rabbi, yeah, it's beautiful. All right.
A rabbi. I don't know. I was just repeating what you said.
Yeah.
You went coming from a rabbi. They went coming from a rabbi.
A rabbi. All right. What else we got?
I was just lost in the story.
Yeah. All right. So trivia. What do you got for us?
So, as many of our listeners know, and it's probably still going on, both the writers and the actors strike is still going on, and there's been so much written about Fran Drescher in all sorts of very, very established publications right now. And so I just was reading an article from the Washington Post about her from the last week or two, and just a little snidbit from It says Drescher has long aligned herself with workers, she said, even when serving as a producer of her hit sitcom. Quote, all the characters I tend to play more often than not are in a class war, she said. With the nanny, Fran Fine famously refuses to cross a picket line. She's like, they hail from working class backgrounds, invariably an outer borough, dating to Connie making googly eyes at John Travolta in Saturday Night Live, and artist relations rep Bobby Fleckman in This Is Spinal Tap. It's in her DNA, she said. I come from a very provincial background of hardworking people. My dad worked 2 jobs when I was very young. My mom was a working mom. I come from that ethic. So it's just, I love opening the paper, and Fran Drescher is, at the center of a lot of these conversations. And the thing is, what this article also kind of expounded on is, and Fran Drescher admits it. She's like, here's the thing. She's like, we're getting a lot of attention because we're actors and the press are interested. And she's like, but these are universal themes. And she's like, I'm really hoping that because we are getting the attention just by virtue of being famous people, that it starts inspiring other unions, and that it starts inspiring other people to unionize, and that this has a much bigger effect. And again, very much acknowledging that, like, we're getting everyone talking about us because we're famous, but this is important for everybody, right? No matter what line of work you're in. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a lot of talk about how this specific time that this labor movement is happening in is so important, because it's really, I mean, that UPS labor movement that just happened, where they got like record deals for including ridiculous things like they have air conditioner now, apparently, which they didn't have, which is insane to think that all this time there's no air conditioning for these guys. It's a nightmare. But anyway, so, that is huge, but also, we've seen a lot of people sort of, kind of come out of, in support. Like the nurses union joined the actors the other day at one of the studios. We've seen a lot of writers team up with the current hotel workers that are on strike around Los Angeles. They've done a lot of pickets together. I think if the writers and actors can really hold out and really, really just push through this, I think they will make some really big headway. And I think if they don't, I mean, not to be too negative, but I think if they don't and they cave, like, it's kind of like the first death knell for this industry, at least as we know it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
And I did read, I think it's still happening, that Fran Drescher was saying for the actors union, at least, like, she's like, we are putting together like multi-million-dollar funds from the people who can afford that to help out and subsidize all of the actors who were, this is literally like the difference between making rent and not making rent. And I was really hoping that there would be conversations about that in the writers union, because there's obviously, a percentage of writers at the very top who could, put money towards funds that would that would allow this whole strike to go on even longer, or allow people to be out picketing longer. And I really love that the actors union is trying to figure that out, because it's so much good sense, right?
Well, The Rock just donated 7 figures, so if more people will do that, that would be amazing.
Okay, but anyway,
all right.
That is a little, it's more like Nanny in the news, and which we do sometimes, and it's just so interesting that it's like now in the news every week.
It's crazy that this is all happening like as we're in season 5 of doing this show that we randomly decided to start to do because we were bored in the pandemic. It's just crazy how things like time out and work out.
Hey, it's spaghetti. No, what was it?
Beshert.
Beshert. It's Beshert.
It's spaghetti.
It's spaghetti and meatballs. So then,
right.
For the Fran and the Cece, I think I had a lot of empathy for Fran in this episode. In that, I totally understand what you were saying about how you think it's not like you are obligated to tell a partner something like this, but like if you want the foundation of just a trusting, open, completely like just again like barrierless relationship, it is the smarter thing to do.
Yeah,
but I just very much like understood Fran being like, the nerve, like this guy he was the reason we were not even together at that point, because he had jerked me around so much. He had literally taken back that he loved me. He had, not acknowledged me, even though I've been like so open and honest about wanting to be with him this whole time. Like, I didn't do anything wrong. Like, I had this little fling and I had this little thing on the side, and, kind of, I could understand doing the mental gymnastics to justify that you didn't do anything wrong, even if there was a little bit of a gray area there, right? Mm-hmm. I was like, I would be the Fran. I've probably been the Fran.
Yeah, I mean, I clearly I wouldn't, so I don't know who I would be in that scenario.
Better than me?
I guess I'd be Maxwell, because I would be very incensed if something like this came out. If I found out that if I had a brother and I found out that like right before Elizabeth and I got engaged, she like very briefly, like we got in some fight and we were like briefly like split up, and then she like hooked up with my brother, I would be very upset.
Well,
with both of them, quite frankly.
I would be very, very upset too. That's why I could kind of understand convincing yourself that you're in the right, even though like the decent thing would have been to say something,
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting one. We should remember to put the question on this episode for Spotify to see what people think.
Yeah.
Speaking of people, you lovely people out there in podcast land are so supportive and so wonderful, and we love you so much. And if you haven't reached out to us, you should do so on Instagram or X. Anyway, we're Mr. Chef Pod on both of those platforms. Additionally, you can send us an email at ohmrsheffieldpodcast@gmail.com. We do like getting those, and we read all of them, and we cry because people love us. And last but not least, I do want to remind people to please go and leave a review and a rating. You could do it on Spotify. You could do it on Apple Podcasts. You could do it anywhere podcasts are sold or given freely to you. That really helps the show and helps us get more listeners and more people find the show. And we will see you next week someone asked me this on Twitter, so I'm just going to say it. Next week is the wedding, part 1, and we will be recording 2 episodes. We're not going to do the whole wedding in one big long episode. I think we're going to do it as it aired, which is we'll watch part 1 and record that, and then we'll watch part 2 and we'll record that. Yeah. And
that's good sense.
All right. And on that note, Toria, goodbye.
The Flushing girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.